What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. What I want to cover today is the concept of being a professional WordPress consultant with no coding skills. Now, I'm going to emphasize no code because what I want to do is give people the opportunity to think about how can they make money with WordPress without having to code a theme or a plugin. I have plenty of videos on those, and I have videos on how to create your own custom theme. But this video is for those who don't want to code, for no code, and maybe a little bit of low code as well. We'll see. All right, so what does it mean to be a professional WordPress consultant? Well, basically, you're providing a host of services that are valuable to small businesses, bloggers, and people who need a website. And considering the fact that WordPress powers well over 40-something% of the modern web, and 60% plus of all websites that use a CMS use WordPress, what that means, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And then on top of that, the fact that millions of websites are going up all the time. And again, the majority of those websites are using WordPress. So if you're looking to switch careers or if you're looking to start something on the side, then learning how to work with WordPress can be lucrative. All right, so what I want to do is cover a bunch of different topics that you're gonna need to know about, especially if you want to be a no-code WordPress consultant. Some of them will be technical, but others will be more about soft skills. Obviously, in the beginning, you're going to need to be able to understand how WordPress operates. Get familiar with themes, get familiar with plugins, how to combine them, how to configure them, especially if you're going to be working within a niche industry. All right, so getting started, one of the first things you're going to have to learn about is domain names. How to pick a good domain name for yourself and how to pick a good domain name for your client. That is something you're going to have to get familiar with, because having the right domain name can make a world of difference for that business. Now, it might be easy just to pick a domain name that matches the name of the company. And sometimes companies have really good names and that name might even be available. But that's not always the case. In that case, you have to get familiar with how to play around with domain names in terms of making them catchy, memorable, but short enough that they're not taking forever to type them out. And that goes along with trying to help build a brand. All right, so I'm going to give you a very easy example over here. If you're working in the real estate industry, let's say you're in New York and your client is a realtor and needs a website. Well, I know this domain name is probably already taken, but you could choose something like newyorkrealestate.com or nyrealestate.com or NYC Real Estate. Obviously, those names are probably taken, but the idea is to try to localize the domain name for that individual. And then once you have a couple of ideas of domain names and you see they're available, you're going to have to consider hosting next. What type of hosting plan are you going to choose? One for yourself and then two for your clients. Now, if you want nothing to do with the command line, if you want nothing to do with optimization and performance and security of your server, then the best option is going to be a managed WordPress solution. And there's plenty of them out there. But basically, just a quick rundown on how hosting works. Think about it like a computer in a data center. And what happens is you have a couple of different types of hosting solutions. You have a shared hosting plan. You have the VPS and dedicated servers. And then you have the managed solutions. Most of them are in the cloud. But basically, shared is going to be the most affordable. You can get a shared hosting plan for less than $3. But then you got to think about it. How can they afford to give you a hosting plan for less than $3 and say, you can have unlimited visitors to your website. You can have unlimited bandwidth. Well, first of all, there's going to be a lot of footnotes you're going to have to check out and a lot of caveats. But then you also have to consider the fact that in order to give you that pricing model, such a low price for the hosting plan, they're going to end up cramming so many websites onto that computer. It's a server in a data center, but I'm just going to reference it like a computer to keep it simple. So instead of having your own little instance of a server on a dedicated server or a cloud provider, what you end up having is a very crowded solution. Some hosting providers might try to even cram 1,000 or 10,000 websites on one computer. Now think about that for a second. With your laptop or your computer, if you have multiple tabs open, multiple applications open, all of those apps, they're vying for resources of that computer. And what happens? The performance goes down and also the security goes down. Two things you're going to think about with hosting: performance and security. And of course, you're going to think about pricing as well. But now if you're going for a shared hosting plan, you have to really think about what is the performance situation of that computer and what happens if one of the other websites is very insecure. All right, so from there you have the VPS options, you have the dedicated servers. Now those are more robust, but they do require you to configure them. And you're probably going to have to be familiar with the command line or some type of control panel. The beauty with a VPS or a dedicated server is the fact that you end up with your own instance for your website. You have a dedicated amount of resources, so you pretty much know what you're working with. And each website, if it's on a VPS, they tend to be partitioned better than on a shared hosting plan. So anything that happens to one website is not going to impact yours. Now, a dedicated server, you have the full resources of that server, but that obviously comes at a premium cost. So then what's the other option? There's the managed WordPress hosting option. And I think that if you don't want anything to do with the command line, if you want to be the no-code or the low-code WordPress consultant, then choosing a managed WordPress hosting plan is the ideal way to go. It's good for you and it's good for your clients. It's definitely going to cost more than shared hosting, but it's going to give you the ability and the peace of mind to increase the performance of your site and the security profile. All right, so from there, the next step is the installation of WordPress. Now, back in the day when I just started off with WordPress, installing it was just a little bit more involved. Wasn't that hard, but it definitely took a little bit more effort. Today, they have a one-click installation. The vast majority of WordPress hosting providers, or hosting providers in general, have a one-click installation option, and that makes it super easy to get started. All right, so far we've covered domain names, we've covered hosting, and now we covered installation. My recommendation at this point is to make sure you're fully familiar on how the hosting providers work. Take a look at the documentation, see if they have any onboarding support for either new clients or for small agencies. Because ultimately, as a WordPress consultant, you're becoming like a boutique agency within a specific field or location. You want to be very familiar with the pricing models that the hosting provider has. And if you're going to be working with them often, see if they have an affiliate program or see if they have a reseller account. The benefit there is that you can potentially get some ongoing income and revenue coming in on a monthly basis. All right, then the next step is you're going to need to learn about themes and plugins. And you probably already know about how themes and plugins work. But in general, for whatever niche you're going to be working in, whatever industry you're going to be focusing on, you want to be able to identify a few themes that will match well with that industry. And then from there, you want to get very familiar on how to work with those themes. Where do you find them? You can find them on WordPress.org to start off with. There are over 10,000 plus free themes on WordPress. So start off there, identify a free one, and then from there, if you see you want to invest a few dollars in a premium theme, there's a few options there as well. Now, when it comes to plugins, one thing you're going to have to do is identify the plugins that basically every website needs, and then identify the types of plugins that are specific to a particular industry. For instance, every website needs a security plugin. So identify a few good security plugins that you can work with and then learn how to configure them properly. Take a look at the documentation pages to see how you should properly set them up. And then from there, you obviously need a backup plugin. So do the same thing with that. Identify one or two good backup plugins, only use one of them, but then learn how to configure it properly. Next, you're probably going to need a good search engine optimization plugin. And there's quite a few on WordPress.org, so figure out which one is going to meet your needs properly. And then obviously you're going to need a contact form. Again, there's a whole bunch of them on WordPress. Spend some time learning how to set up each and every single one of these plugins. And if there's going to be any presentation on the actual site in terms of the front end, see how they look with your theme. Out of the box, most of the WordPress plugins that are dedicated to contact forms will look well with the vast majority of themes. Next, you're probably going to want to look at page builders, especially if you're a no-code type of person, because you're going to want to be able to customize the theme in some way, shape, or form. And page builders give you the opportunity to use drag and drop capabilities. So definitely try to identify some of the more popular page builders. All right, so we covered security, we covered backup solutions, we covered search engine optimization, we covered contact forms, and now we covered page builders. Ideally, what you should do is try to work with all of these on your local development environment, even if you're a no-code type of person. You don't have to be a coder or a programmer to have a local development environment. I have a bunch of videos here on my channel that talk about how to install WordPress on your computer, whether it's Mac OS or Windows. So if that's something you want to do, check out those videos. All right, so again, we covered domain names, we covered hosting, we covered installation, we covered the themes, we covered the plugins. What's next? As a WordPress consultant, there's going to be several things you need to know about. You're going to need to know about how to create content, and in particular, how to make sure that content is SEO optimized. You're going to have to learn about how to customize images when they go on the website. And you're going to probably have to learn about social media marketing as well. All right, so after a couple of weeks of working with WordPress and seeing how to work with the themes and plugins, and once you feel comfortable with the hosting provider and you have everything set up there, The next step is to identify how you're going to operate as a business. Are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be an LLC? That's a question you're going to have to ask yourself and then determine how to get set up from there. Most often, you're going to start off as a sole proprietor. All right, so the next step is you have to set up your website. And you want to make sure that your website demonstrates the type of sites you can create for clients. So that means you have to set up a portfolio. But wait a minute, you're just getting started. So how are you going to have a portfolio in the beginning? And the reality is you don't need a portfolio to get started. But what I do recommend doing is creating a couple of sample websites, especially for the industry you want to work on. Maybe you buy a couple of more domain names and then you set those up as demo websites. And then from there, you add those demos to your site. And that's an easy way to demonstrate to clients the type of sites that you could create for them. Because at the end of the day, whether it's a portfolio or demo sites, clients want to make sure that you know how to get it done. All right, so the next step is branding. You want to be able to develop a brand around your business. So whatever your domain name is, mine is pixemweb.com, pixemweb.com. I came up with the name years ago based on pixels and M's. And what you want to do from there is get all the social media handles that match your business name. Make sure they all link up together in terms of the same branding. All right, so you have your website set up, you have your social media handles. Now it's time for you to start creating content and sharing it all over social media. But beyond that, it's time to make some business cards. I know it's very old school to use business cards, but there's something to be said about networking in public, going face to face to a business and developing relationships within your local community. I'm a big advocate for that. All right, so in the beginning, the types of services you could offer your clients are website setups, SEO services, social media marketing, and content creation. So at this point, it's all about the soft skills. You want to be able to network with people. You want to be able to connect with people. You want to be known as the person to go to when they need a website. Now, the thing is, as a WordPress consultant, you're always going to have to be on top of everything that's changing within the ecosystem. So definitely follow the WordPress news. And then another service you'll probably end up offering is how to set up an e-commerce website. And for that, you're probably going to use WooCommerce. That's another plugin, so definitely get familiar with it. Use it on your local development environment. And again, see how it integrates with your theme. And then from there, you're probably going to have to get familiar with how to work with PayPal and how to work with Stripe. Those are two of the most popular payment services that you can integrate with a website. The next part about being a WordPress consultant is you're going to have to know about how to properly manage your business. In the beginning, it's going to be easier because you're going to have less than a handful of clients. But what happens when you start getting 10, 15, 20, 30 clients? And ideally, you have an ongoing management service that you're providing them in terms of creating content for them or backing up their website, doing security audits with the plugins. Again, we're still doing no code here. So as you get larger, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to manage your business, how you're going to be productive as a WordPress consultant. And one of the most important things you have to remember is you have to have a continuous learning mindset. WordPress is huge. It's always evolving. Things are changing all the time. And there's pros and cons to that. The cons, you're going to have to stay on top of it all. The pros, most business owners don't have the time to stay on top of everything that's changing within WordPress. And that's where you come in. All right, so the next thing to talk about is pricing. How are you going to price your services? And I want to do an even more detailed video on this, but the gist is when you're first starting off, you're not going to be charging $500 an hour. What you typically find is brand new consultants can charge anywhere from $25 to $50 an hour. And that's not bad. If you have a little bit more experience, then you can probably charge anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour. Now, once you become an expert consultant, that's when you can start charging $100 to $200 an hour. And that's if you're offering your services on an hourly basis. But what if you're going to be doing it based on the project? Well, a basic website setup could be anywhere from $500 to $2,000, obviously depending on your skill set. A standard business website can cost about $2,000 to $8,000. And then a more advanced e-commerce type website, that could be about $8,000 to $15,000 or more. And one thing I can't stress enough, and this is so important because you have to remember that you're not always going to have clients beating down at your door. You have to offer maintenance and support packages. And that could be anywhere from $50 to $200 per month, depending on the services you're offering. It could be a backup service, it could be a content creation service, or it could be further customization of the site. Now, for the basic services like keeping the website up to date in terms of the WordPress core, the themes and the plugins, backing everything up, and some minor bug fixes, that could be about $50 to $200 a month. For more complex sites and for a little bit more complex services, you can charge about $200 to $500. And then you could offer as much as $1,000 a month, depending on the industry, depending on the business, and depending on the services you're going to offer. I'm talking about creating content for them. I'm talking about helping them integrate their social media marketing plan with their websites and giving them priority support. And of course, you do all the updates, the backups, the image optimization, and everything else that goes along with it. All right, so what if the person hires you to set up their website as a one-time project, but then wants to take on the management of the site themselves? Well, you're probably going to give them like a 1 hour or 2 hour training. That should really be part of your package. You shouldn't say, all right, I got your website set up, have fun. They're going to need to know how to use it. So you offer them the basic 1 hour to 2 hour overall tutorial. But beyond that, you could also set up individual training. And from there, you could charge $50 to $150 an hour. Now, if you're working with realtors, they tend to be part of a larger office. So you could do a workshop for all the realtors that's part of that office. And for that, that's a big workshop. So for that, you could charge $500 to $2,000. Basically, in order to set the right prices, you want to be able to understand your clients. You want to have value-based pricing, a transparent pricing structure, flexible packages you could offer, and make sure you do your market research to see what other agencies are charging for the same service. Now, all this being said, should you undercharge or should you overcharge? My recommendation is that in the beginning, you have to undercharge. And the reason for this is that nobody knows that you exist at this point. You have to develop a clientele. But once you become more well-known, once you gain more experience as a WordPress consultant, then you can start increasing your fees. And then once you gain more experience, that could be when you decide to become a full-fledged agency. Instead of doing all the work yourself, maybe you bring a couple of people on board. You could either set up a traditional agency where you hire developers, where you hire consultants, where you hire a sales team, social media marketers, people who are experts in SEO, content creators. You build up your own little agency. Or you can even start off by just hiring freelancers. We live in the gig economy. So there's a bunch of freelancers out there who are ready to work. All right, so if you want to be a WordPress consultant, you're going to have to dedicate time learning how WordPress works, learning how to build your brand, how to market your services, and become known as an expert within your area. All right, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification icon. If you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, leave them down below. And as always, thanks for watching. And I typically say happy coding, but in this case, I'll say happy marketing. I'll see you next time. Bye.